Hello and welcome back to an episode of Troytech. Today we're going to be talking about Vadrok, Apex of Thunder, and how he is free real estate. I hate that show, and the only reason I'm using the meme is because it fits. Now, the thing about this particular general is that whenever you mutate him, Vadrok says you may cast target non-creature card with converted mana cost 3 or less from your graveyard without paying its mana cost. Now, the great thing about this is this right here doesn't exile your spells in your graveyard. So you can target a spell that's sitting in your graveyard and just continuously mutate, and hit that free spell. Now, the thing is, you can hit stuff like, for example, telekinesis. This right here is a spell that you would use to usually hit a creature that's about to hit you and make him stop, removes them from combat, and makes them be tapped, which where they cannot untap during the next controller's next 2 untap steps. So for several turns, you'll have them tap down, and whenever you mutate again and again and again, each time you can target it. Now, there's a lot of good targets for this. Like, for example, you could even hit Improbable Alliance. It's not a great card, but this right here is another card that you can hit. There's all kinds of spells that you can hit, as long as it is converted mana cost 3 or less, and it is a non-creature card with converted mana cost 3 or less. You can cast it. So you could even hit, an enchantment / aura. There you go. Now, thing is that this right here, the more times you use it, the more of a combo you can build up. Now, one combo I thought up is a mana combo. For example, Battle Hymn. This right here adds red to your mana pool for each creature you control. And these creatures, you can increase it. Saheeli or Thatcher Revolt. Now, the thing is let's say you're about to go and dash for, the end of the game. You can use Thatcher Revolt with Battle Hymn, or if you are in early game, you can use Saheeli to build up for, later game, because these tokens stay longer than these, because these are gone at end of turn. And then on top of that, you can just snap things so that you can refund some of the mana that you put out in the first place. Now, before we get into any further, well, there is one other piece of the combo, and that is bonus round. Whenever you use bonus round, till end of turn, whenever a player casts an instant or sorcery spell, that player copies and may choose new targets for the copy. So whenever you hit an instant or sorcery in your graveyard, you basically, get lots of copies of it. So let's say you cast it once. The next time you cast it, you get 2 copies of itself. And then the third time you cast it, you get even more copies, which are increased by the previous copies. So by the 4th time you cast it, you're getting 7 copies of it on the 4th cast, which then makes it so it's 11 copies. I'm not going to explain the math right now because it is far too confusing for this video that's going to be on something else. Now, when it comes to being able to cast all these spells, Vadrok, it is a single target ability for each time that you activate it with, mutate. You mutate, when it mutates, that's whenever it does it. Now, the thing is, there's these cards, like Quasi-Duplicate and Cackling Counterpart. Both of them are non-creature spells that are 3 mana cost or less, and the thing is that you can have these sitting in your graveyard and put a copy of Vadrok into the battlefield. Now, let's say, the thing is, you don't want to copy Vadrok himself. You're going to want to have something else be the top card. And so what happens is, because you have something else as the top card, you can then use Quasi-Duplicate or Cackling Counterpart, whichever one you need for which speed, to copy it and put another Regal Leosaur onto the battlefield. Now, the thing is, you now have 2 Regal Leosaurs with the same abilities. Now the great thing is that there's a way to further exploit this, because you see, mutate is a copyable ability. Now let's say you were to go with something like Mark of Eviction for the original card. Mark of Eviction says at the beginning of your upkeep, return an enchanted creature and all auras attached to that creature to their owner's hands. And since it is one object, all of the cards would go back to your hand. And you would still have a Leosaur on the battlefield with Vadrok's ability attached to it. And then all you have to do is you mutate a second Vadrok onto that token. And then you mutate again. Now the thing is, whenever you mutate the Vadrok onto a creature with Vadrok already on it, you get a second target. So let's say I go and mutate this onto there, and I have, where's my other cards at? Let's say I want to do several things. Let's say I have a Mark of Eviction in my graveyard because it got killed or something, and I have a Telekinesis. And let's say someone else is attacking me. I can flash in a Sea Dasher Octopus at instant speed with a mutate. So it'll mutate onto the previous one, which is on the very top is a Regal Leosaur. And so at instant speed, I will put a Mark of Eviction back into play onto the Regal Leosaur, and I will target a Telekinesis, tapping down their creature and removing it from combat for several turns. Now, the great advantage to all of this is that whenever I have multiple, instances of Vadrok's ability on the creature, what happens is I can have multiple spells, but the problem is you cannot target the same spell multiple times. Well, you could, yes, but once the first one resolves, it becomes no longer a legal target, because what happens is it goes onto the stack. The spell that is in the graveyard goes onto the stack, and once it's on the stack, it's no longer in the graveyard and is no longer a legal target for the other triggers of Vadrok's ability. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is stuff with buyback or additional costs. With Capsize in particular, let's say you cast Capsize for its actual cost with no buyback for whatever reason, or you discard it. It goes into your graveyard. You then mutate onto Vadrok, his ability. What happens is you then target Capsize. When you cast it without paying its mana cost, you have the option to pay an additional 3 colorless to add a buyback ability to it, which means that once it resolves, it goes back to your hand. This is great because this allows a level of recursion with buyback cards that wasn't there before. And then let's say you still have like Sea Dasher Octopus in your hand and you mutate at instant speed onto Vadrok. You can use that as an opportunity to counterspell things. Like, for example, Force of Negation is a spell that you can use with Vadrok. And then there's also card draw. You need to have, like, the thing is you want to have multiple copies or multiple cards in your graveyard that you can use without having to have specific targets. Like, for example, Una's Grace, you're going to target yourself with that, right? And then the thing is, though, whenever you have copy spells in your graveyard, whenever you mutate, you can't use them, because whenever you activate, like, let's say I target these 4. What's going to happen is if there's no other spell on the stack, first off, Force of Negation, whenever it goes off, it's not going to be able to target anything, because let's say I target Force of Negation so I can maybe have like a counter spell in my back pocket, in the stack. But the problem is that while the ability to cast it is on the stack still, it's still in the graveyard not being able to be cast. So you don't target Force of Negation unless you are using this right here with another spell on the stack for you to target. So when this mutates in, you can then counter. But if there's nothing on the stack for you to counter with this, putting this in and then targeting this has no effect. There's no way to actually use it at all. Same thing with Twin Cast. Once you have all of these spells stacked, you cannot use Twin Cast to target Una's Grace because Una's Grace is not on the stack yet. It's still in the graveyard. You cannot target a spell with Twin Cast like that. So the only way you can use Twin Cast is in the same timing of Force of Negation. And now here is the biggest piece of the puzzle, is that every time you mutate, you can bring out an Underworld Breach. This Underworld Breach right here gives ultimate recursion as a backup ability to Vadrok's ability so that you can actually cast spells multiple times from your graveyard. Now this right here is all kinds of free stuff off of just one ability, and with how many mutate cards there are, I personally like, you know, the alternate arts and such. I guess one of my favorites right here. But yeah, you have all of these cards. And then you have stuff like, for example, Opt. That right there is a fun card, and you can just continuously do it. You have Una's Grace and Opt. You scry one and draw a card, and you can draw a card as well. So yeah, that's just my Troytech take on, you know, the free real estate general, Vadrok. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.